Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our briefing on the City of Philadelphia's response to gun violence. This briefing is for press only, so if you're not a member of the press, please log out and watch today's live stream on the City of Philadelphia's Facebook page or tune in to 900 AM or 96.1 FM WURD. We realize that many of you may have questions about the tragic fire overnight in the Fairmount neighborhood. However, the city's comments from this morning's presser on site are the latest on this. We'll share additional information at a later time as details emerge. We will begin our briefing with remarks by Mayor Jim Kenney. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thanks, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone. The beginning of the year brings new promise and new challenges as we continue to seek ways to mitigate the senseless violence that continues to tear through our communities. Last year, 562 people were taken from us. They were sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, fathers, and mothers. They meant the world and more to the people who love them. I never stopped thinking about the victims of violence and the incredible void their loss leaves behind for their families. And though we've lost so many, we also know there are so many more families devastated by the injuries incurred from the senseless shootings and violence. This year, our administration remains resolute to fighting this crisis with every power we have. There is no greater priority for our administration than to reduce violence and create safer communities and a more just city for everyone. As we begin 2022, I want to reiterate that it will take all of us working together, the criminal justice system, all levels of government, community, and faith organizations, the business community, and residents to create a safer city for all of us. Today, Police Commissioner Daniel Outlaw will lay out strategies that the police department is employing to tackle this ongoing crisis. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Atwood and her team for an update on one of our core initiatives, Group Violence Intervention, or GVI. Still in pilot mode, it's an evidence-based approach that aims to reduce a specific type of gun violence that involves members of neighborhood groups. GVI is an evidence-based approach that elevates the role community support and social services play in reducing gun violence. And most importantly, it involves law enforcement partnering with the community to focus on the small and active number of people driving the violence plaguing many of our neighborhoods. Now for more details, I'll turn it over to Erica Atwood, Senior Director, Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety, along with Evangelia Manos and Dion Sumter for more on the progress we've made with GVI. Erica?
Thank you, Mayor Kenney, and good afternoon, everyone. Again, I serve as Senior Director for the Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety in the Managing Director's Office. Before I jump into kind of our update on GVI, I wanted to say thank you to the Philadelphia Eagles for their partnership in launching a new anti-violence campaign, Enough Keeping Score. It's a step, a beginning step in a partnership with a critical institution in our city to connect individuals who want to support the reduction of gun violence, as well as those who are looking for support and resources for those who may be most vulnerable to gun violence through launching the website and phillygunviolence.com. Again, thank you to the entire Philadelphia Eagles team, from the administration on down to the players and support staff. Next, talking about our group violence intervention program, we launched this program in April of August of 2020 as a part of our larger strategy, and our group violence intervention program is really focused on how do we support those who are most vulnerable to being victims of perpetrators of gun violence with positive supports and activities. And it's really tied into making sure that we are facilitating the key tenet of the roadmap to safer communities, connected and thriving youth and young adults. And what we're going to do today is give you an update, a status report on that strategy, and you'll be able to hear from not only the staff that has been managing this, but as well as community members that have been taking part of it. And with that, I will hand it over to Evangelia Manos and Dion Sumter.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Erica. My name is Evangelia Manos. I'm the Chief of Staff to the First Deputy Managing Director. and the City of Philadelphia launched a pandemic modified version of the group violence intervention strategy, as Erica said, in August of 2020. GVI, originally developed by Professor David Kennedy of the National Network of Safer Communities at John Jay College in New York City, has been successfully implemented in cities across the country over the past more than 2 decades. It's based on the widely known premise that the majority of victims and perpetrators of gun violence, approximately 60% or more, are part of a tiny interconnected part of the population, about half of 1%, who are often part of a neighborhood group connected to the geographic area where shootings take place. Like many urban centers across the country, Philadelphia has had a low clearance rate in incidents where shooting victims survive. This is predominantly because the individuals in this half of 1% of the population are among the least likely to cooperate with police when they are victims of crime. We also know and have seen that shootings are like an infection spreading because of group members' propensity to retaliate when they or their fellow members are shot. As a result, a single shooting can generate, as we've seen, as many as 5 or more related shootings. In recent years, these dynamics have been exacerbated and magnified by the proliferation of disputes on social media, which have increased both the frequency and the geographic scope of rivalries and disagreements. GVI is a law enforcement focused strategy which responds to each of these dynamics by, number one, directly engaging the 0.5% of individuals connected to groups that are involved in gun violence. Number two, creating consequences where there were previously none for groups and group members in direct response to shootings. And number three, interrupting the contagious effect of shootings by creating an incentive for individuals to discourage and resist violent behavior in order to avoid the promised consequences. Now, traditionally, GVI is implemented in what is traditionally known as a call-in. A call-in is a face-to-face meeting between group members and representatives of the GVI partnership, which consists of GVI caseworkers, police, prosecutors, moral voices, which usually are co-victims of shooting violence who have lost a loved one to gun violence, and credible messengers. Together, the GVI partners deliver the strategy's anti-violence messages to representatives of groups. And while the individual messages can be nuanced, it can be boiled down to the depicted group's message. Groups are driving gun violence, receive consequences if you shoot, or help if you want it. Our community, including you, is hurt by gun violence. You are connected to group violence. Put down the guns, share this message with your group. During the COVID-19 pandemic, large group gatherings were prohibited, and therefore the city could not implement GVI in the traditional manner. However, seeing shootings and homicides rise and recognizing the emergent need to implement, the city modified version of the GVI strategy and implemented it in August of 2020. Under the modified strategy, the city conducted direct engagement in the community by deploying mobile call-in teams. The mobile call-in team consists of members of the GVI partnership, a GVI caseworker. Actually, could you go to the first slide? A GVI caseworker, thank you. A co-victim of homicide who has lost someone to gun violence, credible messenger, police and prosecutors, the same team that would be presenting at a call-in. We have referred to these teams publicly in the past as GVI teams or custom notification teams, but the term mobile call-in team is more appropriate because they are literally bringing the call-in to the individual. Now, if you can show the slide of the map. If you look in the report, there is a map which depicts where GVI, it's on the screen, thank you. As you can see from the map on the screen, which depicts where GVI has been implemented in the city and when we initiated GVI in that particular area. We began implementation in the Southwest Division of the city and then expanded into Central, followed by South, and then into Northwest section of the city. In Philadelphia, mobile call-in teams went out essentially every weekend, with few exceptions, with multiple teams and completed dozens of in-person visits every single week. This resulted in above average contacts compared to implementation in other cities because of repetition and volume. To date, through mid-December, 598 individual candidates have been identified for custom notification or mobile call-ins. The mobile call-in teams have conducted approximately 1,191 home visits, resulting in 302 direct engagements with individual group members and 239 collateral contacts with family members or influentials of GVI candidates. Beginning in October 2021, GVI was cleared to begin holding traditional in-person call-ins, which are now supplemented by our mobile call-in team deployments following the group meeting. While thus far we have held one in-person call-in, which focused in groups operating within the Central Division and a single district in the Northwest Division, we do anticipate and are currently planning for additional call-ins in 2022. In January, the Southwest Division, February, the Northwest Division, March, the South Division, and April, the Northeast Division, May, the East Division. I want to briefly touch on the enforcement aspect to the strategy. As I mentioned in the beginning of my remarks, GVI is a law enforcement focused strategy with a social service component. In Philadelphia, GVI has created a framework by which local, state, and federal enforcement partners can communicate directly regarding GVI engagement and group activity, and therefore leverage any ongoing law enforcement activity with respect to these groups. Law enforcement partners communicate directly to group members to set clear expectations about consequences. If they are the first group to commit a shooting or the most violent group, the entire group will receive attention from law enforcement for any illegal activity they are engaged in, with a focus on finding the lowest level of enforcement that will change behavior. Some enforcement measures could include the following: additional probation visits, requesting high bail, requesting probation revocation, referring a case to the federal authorities for prosecution, or prioritizing enforcement and disruption of illegal electrical hookups. Since August 2020, 26 groups have been the subject of group enforcement action due to their sustained involvement in gun violence. I now want to turn it to Dion Sumter, who is our GVI coordinator, and will talk more about the services component and case management. Dion?
Thank you, Evangelist Manos. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Yeah. So good afternoon all. And by way of introduction, I am the GVI coordinator for the Office of Violence Prevention. And for some disclosure, I was born and raised in the Germantown section of our city, and I served a little more than 2.5 years in federal custody. And after my release, I was able to enroll in Community College of Philadelphia and ultimately transferred to Temple University. At Temple, I was able to obtain my bachelor's and master's degree in the helping profession of social work. So I come into this work with a desire to help. And as someone who has a similar lived experience of the individuals whose lives we are hoping to positively impact with this strategy. With the help of our partners, we have identified some of the most vulnerable and at-risk individuals in communities plagued by violence. And we have launched an aggressive effort to directly engage those individuals to help them avoid prison, injury, or death. This is extremely difficult work that my team and I are extremely passionate about. We know that gun violence is a serious problem, but we also know and have learned that one of the few things that helps to reduce gun violence is direct intervention. Interventions that require person-to-person interaction with those directly and or indirectly involved and those at risk of being victims or perpetrators. Throughout the pandemic, to best reach this population, we have gone almost every Saturday into the community and engaged hundreds of individuals and their families, along with community members. Myself and our law enforcement partners and our moral messengers, our moms like Ms. Cherie, who will be speaking soon, who's with us today, we deliver this basic message to our young people. that gun violence is wrong and it must stop. But it does not end there. My team and I, we do persistent follow-up calls, home visits, and we push as hard as we can to get those individuals to take the offer of help and to ultimately encourage them to try something different. We have seen that consistent follow-ups and direct engagements are required and needed for all of our candidates. We offer and can connect our participants to a massive array of services: education attainment, housing relocation, mental health services, documentation attainment, and drug treatment and alcohol. But we have seen that employment is by far our most requested service. For our GVI participants, we offer them immediate employment through our partners at the Center for Employment Opportunity, CEO. CEO provides workforce training and transitional employment placement to all of our GVI candidates. Candidates are assigned to a GVI work crew and will then be placed at a CEO work sites. After candidates complete the transitional employment, they successfully transition to full-time employment. As an example of GVI and CEO's process, if a young person that my team and I engage with on Saturday, and he tells me, hey, Mr. Dion, I am in need of help, I am in need of employment, we can have this young person connected to CEO within the next business day. And thankfully, we can have that young person officially assigned to GVI work crew and working within a week of our first encounter. As an incentive to encourage these individuals to try something different and to accept our offer, they receive a $100 gift card incentive just for showing up to orientation and completing orientation. Since the summer, we have experienced a 65% retention rate of our GVI participants at CEO. The incentive has helped, but I believe the retention rate is directly tied to the ongoing case management and peer support that we provide to all of our participants pre and post-service connection. To best support our candidates' wishes, we also offer them additional employment opportunities. We can link them with building trades, electric assembly, demolition, construction, and among others within the Philadelphia private and public sector. Within our progress report, we highlighted some examples and client quotes to share examples of our client-centered work. But as a disclaimer, we've learned that employment is not the only insecurity that our participants face. Several of our candidates have experienced various adverse experiences: food insecurities, housing insecurities, parental incarceration, and mental health is also a severe barrier that most of them face. We have candidates that have been victims of gun violence on more than one occasion. Now, there are participants that have declined job offers that we've offered them because they fear of going into a specific neighborhood due to some past conflict. However, I would like to share one particular story, and respectfully, I will keep the client's name anonymous, but I will refer to the participant as John Doe. John Doe is associated with a group driving gun violence. The GVI team went to Mr. Doe's home, and we made contact with his mother, and we also was able to make contact with Mr. Doe. And from there, we was able to deliver our full GVI message, overall expressing our disapproval of gun violence. He expressed and shared an interest in working, but appeared hesitant to commit. A GVI case manager introduced the participant to one of our employment partners, CEO. The participant was scheduled for 3 orientations, but he did not attend either 3. His excuse for missing the 3 orientations was basically he had this fear of rejection. He constantly asked himself, will they accept me? Can I do the work? Am I ready? And Mr. Doe has never had a job before. So that fear of going out into the workforce was something that was unknown to him. But to best support the participant, we encouraged him, again, ultimately to try something different, but we also registered him for a 4th orientation. And as a moral support person, I decided to pick the participant up myself, and I drove him to orientation. I sat with him throughout the entire orientation. After the participant completed orientation, he was assigned to our GVI work crew. And after a month of being on our work crew, he enjoyed the process, and being able to make his own personal particular money, he was able to refer 3 additional group members to us, and we have been able to successfully place them all on a GVI work crew. And Mr. John Doe has been successfully transitioned to full-time employment. And I believe this story is a great example of our work. It shares our clients' internal struggles and our case managers' everyday challenge to help improve the outcomes and livelihood of our participants. This work requires moments when you must go above and beyond to best help our participants. However, this work consists of many others that has helped make our efforts possible. Most importantly, our mothers, our moral messengers, the mothers of GVI. At this time, I would love to be able to introduce Ms. Cherie Ryans.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dion, for that. My name is Cherie Ryans, and I became a part of Group Violence Convention Program when it started way back in August of 2020. I'm here because my son and his best friend were murdered over 30 years ago at 40th and Walnut Street, leaving a movie theater. GVI has been so very important to my life because I've always wanted to find out or wanted to talk to someone who has been involved in gun violence to find out where they are, what could have been done to help them. And so that's what we do on Saturdays. Every Saturday, a group of us go out and we talk to these young men and some young ladies concerning violence, where they are, where their head is, how can we help? And then when I look into their eyes and they look into my eyes and I tell them my story, I can see the pain and the hurt that they feel. And so we let them know that we're there to help. They are fearful sometimes of seeking help or giving out too much information. They're fearful, but we let them know that, just like Dion said, there are options and opportunities that GVI can offer them. All they have to do is open up themselves to take it, to grasp that information. GVI is one of the vehicles that has helped me fulfill a vow that I made over 30 years ago. I wanted to find a way to communicate, interact, encourage, and motivate would-be perpetrators, and that those who are done something or who possibly will do something, I want to be able to help them in any way that I can. And GVI is that vehicle. I thank GVI for allowing me to be a part of that. I plan to continue. I want to have my vow that I made fulfilled, and I know that GVI will do that. And the team is excellent. The team is excellent, and we have gained trust with them because we are consistent in what we say and what we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ryans. We will now move to Police Commissioner for her remarks.
Good afternoon, and thank you. First, I want to join our city in mourning the loss of 13 individuals who died in a tragic fire early this morning. I also want to thank everyone in our city to keep the surviving victims and thanking them in advance for keeping them in their thoughts as they begin their road to recovery. Before we begin today, I want to mention what happened last night. For those of you who don't know, there was a police discharge, or what we call an officer-involved shooting, at approximately 6:25 p.m. We responded to the 1900 block of South Bancroft Street, and while attempting to execute an arrest warrant on the offender, they were met with gunfire, with the offender discharging at our officers several times. Police on location then returned gunfire, striking the offender. He was promptly transported to a local hospital where he succumbed to his injuries, and no police officers or other civilians were injured during this incident. This is yet another example of the kind of violence that not just our officers on the street encounter, but many members of our communities as well. It's unimaginable that last year, 562 people were murdered in our city, 562. Like the mayor said, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, cousins, 562 mothers who are mourning the loss of their child, children, women. And as you just heard, there's a lot of work going on throughout the city to address this tragic situation from all angles. The PPD is a key component in the city's gun violence reduction strategy. Every stakeholder must not only be willing to work as a team to solve these problems, but we have to ensure that our individual agencies are working at peak efficiency from within. I'll say it again. What's happening here in Philadelphia cannot ever be deemed or accepted as normal. I find it entirely unacceptable, and the Philadelphia Police Department is wholly committed to stemming these trends. For myself and our department, there is no single issue that is of more importance. On our end, the PPD has worked tirelessly to address violent crime. Despite the year that we've had, our pinpoint deployments have been incrementally effective, quite frankly. By the end of 2021, a third of our districts experienced significant decreases in non-fatal shootings. Overall, in our pinpoint locations across the city, we saw a 14% reduction in shooting victims when compared to the previous year in 2020. The 17th district saw a 51% reduction in shooting victims, the 14th district, a 24% reduction, the 12th district, a 21% reduction. And in places like the 15th district, we had a 7% reduction in shootings. While this may not seem like a lot, when you consider the number of shootings dropping from 138 to 40, as was the case in the 15th district, you see that these pinpoint grids and our efforts are working where they are being used. In addition to our successes with Operation Pinpoint, our Violation of Uniform Fire Act, or VUFA arrests, and our crime gun confiscations rose to numbers that PPD had never seen before. In other words, we've taken more guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals than at any other time. Imagine the bloodshed that was prevented. And while we may never know those numbers, one spared life would be considered a success. I would be remiss if I did not mention that we've done all of this with less officers on the street and less funding. 2021 has shown us that suspending our funding and decreasing our budget will not make the community safer. Some difficult lessons were learned in 2020, and those experiences helped us fortify our relationships with several local, state, and federal agencies. Their assistance helped to supplement our officers on the street and significantly contributed to reducing crime in multiple locations throughout the city. I'm thankful and extremely grateful that moving forward, these relationships will only get even stronger within programs like the National Public Safety Partnership that we announced at the end of last year. Obviously, there's absolutely more work that needs to be done here, and we're always looking for ways to improve the services that we provide. With the unconscionable amount of shootings that the city experienced last year, it is imperative that we the PPD, have to redouble our efforts. To that end, the PPD has created a non-fatal shooting unit. This unit, which will work closely with our homicide unit, was created to centralize the detectives investigating non-fatal shootings across the city. Analysts will be assigned to work side by side with these investigators to develop information and leads based on the shared intelligence and data. Deputy Commissioner Ben Nash, who's on with us, who's our Deputy Commissioner over investigations, will be available later to answer questions about this unit. But I think we've covered this enough, and that our clearance rates, specifically amongst our non-fatal shootings, needs to improve. Our homicide clearance rates do as well. But really, if we can get ahead of our non-fatal shootings, we know that we will do everything that we can in our power to deter the prevention of or the execution of homicides. In addition, we've taken officers out of special units and placed them back on patrol to have more boots on the ground. We've consistently used data to guide our officer deployments, putting more officers in areas that need more police presence. And we will continue these redeployment efforts as long as we are experiencing this gun violence crisis. Additionally, we have recently received promotional eligibility lists for several ranks, including the rank of detective. I expect to promote a number of detectives to bolster our investigative capacity by the end of January or early February, either way, as soon as possible. Furthermore, we've also enhanced our capabilities in forensics. We now have enhanced capabilities to conduct analysis of DNA in ways that were not available to us or that we weren't able to utilize in the past. We hope to roll out this new initiative within the first 6 weeks of this year. Lastly, I'll say this. It's no secret that our staffing has decreased significantly over the years. We're down close to 700 sworn officers since 2016. Having boots on the ground is integral to our mission of providing top-level public safety in this city. And I'm happy to say that more help is on the way. Last Monday, 84 new Philadelphia police recruits began their training at the police academy. This is by far the largest academy class to begin training in several years. And we aim to have several new classes of equal size begin their training in 2022. With that said, I know time is of the essence, so I'll turn this over to Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, who's our Deputy Commissioner of Patrol, who will provide updated statistics on what police are seeing in our pinpoint grids. DC Dales.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you make it a little larger? Okay. Okay, next slide. Okay, I will start with the citywide homicide and shooting victim year-end totals. Looking at the top of the chart, it shows Philadelphia ending the year with 562 homicides and 2,332 shooting victims. In comparison to 2020's year-end total, homicides are up 13%, 562 in 2021, and 499 in 2020. And shooting victims are up 4%, 2,332 in 2021, and 2,245 in 2020. Looking at the bottom of the bottom left of the chart, it shows the motives for the homicides are number 1, arguments, number 2, drugs, and number 3, domestic. Next slide, please. This slide shows the citywide homicide and shooting victim stats weekly comparison. From December 27th to December 31st, we had 13 homicides, 38 shooting victims, which include homicides and multiple shooting victims. In reference to the multiple shooting victims from December 27th to December 31st, we had 1 sextuple, 1 triple, and 4 double shootings. Looking at the bottom of the column, it shows 26 shooting occurrences for the week. And again, shooting occurrences is an incident count where an individual or individuals were shot. So we're pretty much counting the incidents, not the number of shooting victims. Next slide, please. And again, these are year-end totals. This slide shows the comparison between citywide homicides and homicides that occurred in the pinpoint grids. Let me see, it's cut off a little bit here. I can see. The top chart shows citywide homicides up 13%, but the 13% is missing. I don't know if you can adjust the screen or not. I don't know, can you see the 13% at the top? Okay, I'll continue on. Looking at the bottom chart, it shows homicides in the pinpoint grids at 0%. Next slide, please. This slide shows the comparison between citywide shooting victims and shooting victims in the pinpoint grids. The top chart shows citywide shooting victims up 4%, and the bottom chart shows shooting victims down in the pinpoint grids by 14%. Next slide, please. Looking at the top of the chart, it shows citywide homicides down 18% and citywide shooting victims up 2% when comparing the current 4-week period from December 6th to December 31st with the previous 4-week period from November 8th to December 5th. Looking at the bottom of the chart, it shows homicides up 19% and shooting victims up 16% in the pinpoint grids when comparing the current 4-week period with the previous 4-week period. Next slide, please. This slide shows the year-end total VUF arrests for 2017 through 2021. And at the end of 2021, we reached a record high for VUF arrests that totaled 2,541. In 2020, we had 2,324 VUF arrests, which is a 9% increase when compared to 2021. Next slide, please. As of December 31st of this year of 2021, 5,920 crime guns were recovered in our city, which is also a record high. A crime gun is any gun recovered by police as part of a criminal investigation. And again, these numbers, they do not include the guns from the buybacks or turn-ins. In 2020, we recovered 4,989 crime guns by the end of the year. Comparing that number to 2021 year in total, which again is 5,920, we're showing a 19% increase, which is 931 more crime guns recovered this year compared to 2020. Next slide, please. And lastly, by the end of 2021, 571 privately made firearms, which is also known as ghost guns, were recovered in Philadelphia. I would like to point out that in 2020, a total of 250 ghost guns were recovered by the end of the year. And by the end of 2021, we have surpassed that number, as you can see. This shows a significant increase in ghost guns recovered this year in comparison to both 2020 and 2019. Also, the aforementioned VUFA and crime gun confiscation stats I just mentioned clearly show that our officers are out there working. So with that, I will now turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Ben Nash, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Investigations, and he will speak about cases we wish to highlight.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Dales. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I'm going to begin by providing arrest updates as I normally do during these press conferences. Since our last press conference, the Philadelphia Police Department have arrested 4 individuals wanted for committing homicides. In addition, I will also be featuring a few of the fugitives that are wanted for homicides that occurred in this past year. Now, if you can, Kevin, if you can move to the next slide. The following slides are of individuals that were recently arrested for homicide, starting with an incident from 2019 and continuing on the incidents chronologically by the date of occurrence to the latest of the 2021 homicides with the arrest. And the first one, as you see, is a picture of Nassim Edwards. The incident, and on December the 21st of this past year, 22-year-old Nassim Edwards was arrested for the murder of 21-year-old Anthony Williams for an incident that occurred on August the 6th of 2019 on the 1500 block of West Allegheny Street. The incident appears to have stemmed from an ongoing argument between the victim and the offender. It is important to note that Mr. Edwards was also charged with a separate incident from an attempted murder of another victim that occurred on July 12th of 2020 in the 500 block of North 58th Street. So we're glad to be able to have him in custody at this point. Next slide, please. Thank you. On December the 29th, 21-year-old Donald Motley was arrested for the murder of 46-year-old Ton Nguyen that occurred on August the 14th of 2021 on the 6700 block of Woodland Avenue. An argument is believed to have been the motive for this homicide. Next picture is of Malik Banks. And this incident occurred on December the 22nd. I'm sorry, the arrest was on December the 22nd. 29-year-old Malik Banks was arrested for the murder of 30-year-old Jason Barnes that occurred on December the 15th of 2021 in the 3100 block of Kensington Avenue. This is an incident that occurred right in front of the SEPTA police officers. The murder appears, we believe it was a retaliation for a prior shooting. The next slide is of Jillian Saunders. And on December the 20th, 43-year-old Jillian Saunders was arrested for the murder of 36-year-old Jason Greenlee. It occurred on December the 20th, same day of the arrest, on the 300 block of West Ruscombe Street. This homicide was domestic related. Next, I'm going to be featuring a number of suspects currently wanted for homicides. And as we always do, we are asking for, and I will say that we've been getting a lot of assistance from the public. So hopefully members of the public will see some of these wanted individuals and provide information on where they are. And the first slide is 43-year-old Earl Hassan. And the next slide will be of Jarvay Scott. Both of these individuals are wanted for the murder of 33-year-old Troy Berry for an incident that occurred on September the 30th in the 1900 block of Hunting Park Avenue. The motive for that homicide was an argument. And the next slide is Kylie Smith. And along with the photo of the next individual, Sean Williams, 30-year-old Kylie Smith, who you see on the screen, along with 28-year-old Sean Williams, who's on the next slide, are wanted for the murder of 46-year-old Philip Wise that occurred on September 22nd in the 5600 block of Osage Avenue. The motive for this homicide appears to have been a robbery. The next slide will be of Jermaine Small, and this is a warrant that was obtained just near the end of the year on December the 29th of 2021. 26-year-old Jermaine Small is wanted for a double murder of 38-year-old Christopher Mears and 43-year-old Nicholas Ferrante. The incident occurred on December the 3rd in the 4000 block of Passmore Street. I want to point out on this particular wanted individual, we did put out a video compilation that received a lot of attention from the media, and we got a significant amount of response from people who recognized the individual from the video, and that was a very significant element of helping us to be able to obtain the warrant for this male. Now we want to get him into custody. We do believe that the motive for this double homicide was drugs. The next slide is a wanted photo of, this is Leslie Ayala, 33-year-old Mr. Ayala is wanted for the murder of 32-year-old John Barber on December the 7th. The incident happened in the 1800 block of East Lippincott Street. And the motive for this homicide, we believe, is drug-related over drug territory. So those are the individuals that we have wanted for. And as always, we ask for the public's help. They've been responding in kind, which has been very helpful. They can always contact our tip line at 686-TIPS. That's 215-686-8477. And please remember, there is a standing $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of any homicide fugitive. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin from the mayor's office.
Thank you. And we will now move to Q&A for members of the press. Again, for those that may have joined late, just a reminder that we know many of you have questions about the fire overnight in the Fairmount area, but right now the city's comments from this morning's presser on site are the latest information on this, and we'll share additional information at a later time as more details emerge. Because of limited time, only one representative from each media outlet is permitted to ask questions. Reporters are asked to limit their questions to 2 or fewer. Today, given the time and the hard deadline of 2 o'clock, we are limiting topics to questions related to today's presentations. With that, I will open it up to Brian Mendoza of Telemundo.
Hola Armando, buenas tardes. Si le puedes preguntar a la comisionada si ella cree que este año, o sea, vamos a seguir por el mismo camino con tantos homicidios como se vio el año pasado, o si piensa que se va a mitigar más la situación y vamos a poder controlar menos muertes.
The question is for the Commissioner Outlaw. Brian would like to know for our Hispanic audience whether you think that this year, 2022, we will have the same number of homicides in the city, or if there will be a drop in a more manageable situation under control this year.
Thank you for that question. I don't think, one homicide is too many. Obviously, we don't expect to see numbers like 562 again. That's something that I take very seriously. The police department takes it very seriously. We learned a lot of lessons last year from 2020, and then the same thing moving forward from 2021. One of the things that I learned very early on is that we have to be willing to adapt, we have to be agile, and we have to be willing to be introspective and look at whatever our original plan was, where we need to make tweaks, reorganize and restructure if need be. And that's what we're doing for 2022. We know that there are some things that worked really well. And those are the things where I say we're going to redouble our efforts. We know when we can get federal prosecution, extremely, extremely effective. We know when we work with our partners, ATF, DEA, FBI, the marshals doing warrant sweeps, everyone, that sends a message, a very strong message. We will continue to do that. But the reality is we know that our staffing is shrinking, and we have to be quick on our toes and figure out what we're going to do to complement the resources that we have out there. That's why we talk about moving bodies from specialized units and putting them out there so we can not only increase our visibility, but to ensure that we have force multipliers, get data and intelligence on who's out here committing these crimes, identify them and take them to jail. This is time for triage. We rolled out a plan in June of 2020. There's a lot of great things in there, but right now we have to focus on stopping the bleeding. There's too many people that have made pleas saying, look, I want to feel safe. I don't feel safe. I've lost my child. I've been here my entire life and I'm ready to leave. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. So the time is now for us to not only step up our game, but to again, reaffirm that there's a sense of urgency behind this. So the answer is no, I don't expect to see the numbers that we saw at the end of the year, but I will also restate that we are but one part of this. And I'm responsible for our one part, and I'm gonna keep at it and go hard, even harder than before. Than the previous year.
La respuesta que nos da la comisionada Outlaw dice que obviamente una muerte solamente es demasiado y no esperamos tener los mismos números de los 562 fallecimientos que hemos tenido. Seriamente ha habido lecciones que hemos aprendido que empiezan desde el año 2020 y a lo largo del 2021, Y una cosa que desde temprano nos dimos cuenta es que tenemos que estar dispuestos a adaptarnos, a ser ágiles en nuestra respuesta, a ser introspectivos para ver qué es lo que funciona, qué es lo que no funciona y qué es lo que hay que cambiar. Obviamente queremos reorganizarnos, reestructurar nuestra respuesta y para ello tenemos una buena relación con nuestros socios comunitarios. Hemos visto, por ejemplo, que el procesamiento judicial a nivel federal es algo extremadamente eficaz y también con nuestros colegas de ATF, el FBI y también con el servicio de los alguaciles. El mensaje que queremos transmitir es en realidad de que nuestro personal se está reduciendo y tenemos que hacer el mejor uso posible de nuestros recursos, tomando a los oficiales que están especializados para poder desplegarlos y de manera que tengan una presencia visual que multiplique su presencia en las áreas donde se necesita. También tenemos el procesamiento de datos, de información, de inteligencia que nos indica quién está haciendo qué cosa en qué área. Y esta es una operación de intervención temprana. Nosotros hemos aprendido que desde junio del 2020 tenemos este programa de datos para tratar de detener el sangrado y el tratar de evitar de que la gente tenga una actitud negativa, se sienta segura dentro de la ciudad y no diga, pues perdí a mi niño, hay mucho crimen, me quiero ir de la ciudad. El momento es ahora para poder hacer estos cambios. Tenemos que acercarnos a la comunidad, tratar de implementar en ellos el sentido de la urgencia para hacer esto. Y obviamente nosotros no esperamos tener las mismas cifras, los mismos números tan negativos que hemos tenido. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Armando.
Thanks, Brian. We'll now go to Anna Orso at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Good morning, everyone. This question is for Commissioner Outlaw. Are you able to say at this point if there is a criminal investigation underway in Fairmount, or if there's any possibility that this could turn into a homicide investigation, or that these deaths could be classified as homicide?
No, so it's too early to tell on that. Obviously, if there's any evidence located that determines that the PPD needs to step in, we will do that, but it's still too early to speak on that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Anna. We'll now go to Perla Lara of Impacto.
¿Me escuchan ahora sí?
Hola, Perla, ¿qué tal?
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bueno, pues sabemos que es multifactorial, ¿no? La problemática de tantos homicidios y de tantos crímenes y de tanta violencia. Es para cualquiera que quiera contestar. Pero ¿cuál creen que sería el origen principal de esta situación que estamos viviendo en Filadelfia, en especial, siendo una de las ciudades más violentas y donde más muertos hay, y sobre todo más jóvenes cada vez, más mujeres también? ¿Cuál sería como la primera causa? ¿Y qué podemos hacer nosotros como comunidad? ¿Qué llamado le hacen a la población? O sea, creo que ya están haciendo muchas cosas de esa parte, pero también, o sea, a nivel de administración y de policía y demás, pero ¿cuál es el apelo para la comunidad?
Bien, gracias. The question from Perla is directed to whomever wishes to respond to it. It is my understanding that the problem that the city faces with homicides, crime, and violence has several factors, multi-factor, that creates this problem. But what do you think is the main origin of this problem, of the situation of violence in Philadelphia? The incredible number of deaths, especially amongst young people and women. And we understand that there's efforts that are being deployed. And what would be the message then for the community about this?
If you're looking for the main reason for this, I mean, certainly poverty is a major factor. I think that the easy accessibility of guns. I mean, this is a state, and I've said it before, where you can get a gun faster than a driver's license. You have to take a test, the driving test, the written test. If you go and pull up California's gun laws and New York State gun laws and see what you have to do as a resident there to buy a handgun, there's multiple hoops you have to jump through and multiple things you have to do. If I can get in a car next weekend and drive out to Trooper to the Oaks Convention Center and buy a bag full of guns and sell them out of the trunk of my car with no questions asked, that's the reason why disputes turn into killings as opposed to fistfights. And if you take the gun out of the equation, you may have two young men fighting in the street, and that's not great either, but at least both of them are going to walk away alive.
Yo creo que la razón principal radica en la pobreza en nuestra comunidad y el acceso desmesurado y fácil a las armas de fuego en nuestro estado, y esto es algo que yo ya he mencionado anteriormente. Es increíble pensar de que para obtener una licencia de conducir se tiene que tomar una prueba escrita y una prueba de manejo, y si se compara, por ejemplo, con lo que tiene que hacer un residente en California o en Nueva York para poder acceder a un arma de fuego, tienen que pasar por múltiples requisitos. Sin embargo, si yo quisiera, la próxima semana pudiera ir al centro de convenciones a uno de estos espectáculos de venta de armas, comprar un montón, ponerlas en mi maletera y distribuirlas ilegalmente. Eso es lo que hace que las disputas se conviertan en homicidios en vez de una pelea a puñetazos. Y esto es una razón principal de los motivos por los cuales tenemos estas cifras tan lamentables.
Armando, if I can just jump in really quick too. So to take it, operationally to even more of a granular level, we know also that in addition to the availability of guns or the guns that we're seeing, those normal disputes, those are turning into shootings, as the mayor stated. But we also saw as drivers, which was similar in 2020, we also saw that our shootings and our non-fatal shootings and our homicides were being driven by narcotics, the sales of narcotics. Again, social media disputes or disputes of any kind, retaliation. And then we also saw an increase in a lot of the violence being pushed indoors, domestic related. And so that's even more specific. So again, we always tout about how we use data and intelligence to inform how we're going to deploy our resources or where we should be paying attention. Those are key areas. So when we say that, we are prioritizing VUFA or gun arrests, that's because we know guns, illegally carried guns, are driving a lot of this violence. Same thing with sales of narcotics. And it's in small focused parts of the city that's driving the citywide violence. And we know if we can get wins in these smaller areas, we can get citywide gains. We also need to continue to work with those stakeholders who have their hands in working with domestic violence victims, either in prevention or with offenders after the fact, to try to get ahead of what we're seeing in the domestic violence realm. And we anticipate as it gets colder, a lot of this violence will be driven inside. So again, it's working with our stakeholders in these key areas to make sure that we're nipping this in the bud as early as we can early on in the year.
La comisionada Outlaw nos agrega que en adición a lo que el alcalde nos ha mencionado, también hay factores operativos al grado molecular en nuestro análisis. Podemos ver de que la fácil disponibilidad de las armas de fuego es uno de los factores que hace que las disputas se conviertan en tiroteos, pero también se incrementa esto porque hay una venta de narcóticos a lo largo de la ciudad, es lo que hemos visto, y eso puede llevar a tiroteos que, aunque no sean fatales, son negativos. También la necesidad de extraer venganza se da, y las disputas en los medios sociales, que es algo relativamente nuevo. También otro factor que impulsa estas cifras es la violencia doméstica en casa. Y nosotros estamos trabajando porque tenemos datos que hay ciertas áreas de la ciudad donde se dan estos problemas que concentran los números e impulsan a toda la ciudad. Tenemos que priorizar los arrestos de bufa por las armas de fuego disponibles, y sabemos nosotros que estos son los factores que impulsan estas cifras. También estamos trabajando con todos los interesados a lo largo del estado para tratar de ejercer mayor prevención de la violencia doméstica y mantener estas cifras bajo control. Y finalmente, quiero decir de que probablemente, según el clima se haga más frío, esta violencia doméstica va a multiplicarse dentro de casa, y estos son los factores que contribuyen a estas cifras lamentables, y estamos trabajando en todo ello. Gracias.
Por eso, Armando, la segunda pregunta era, ¿qué podemos hacer nosotros como comunidad? ¿Cuál es el mensaje para la comunidad de lo que está en nuestras manos hacer? Y escucho mucho también de que esas cosas que dan origen a estos problemas tienen que ver mucho con la salud mental también. Y en ese aspecto, pues creo que es una cuestión, porque los narcóticos vienen también de muchos problemas que tienen, obviamente, la adicción, pero con una base de salud mental. La mala resolución de los problemas y que tienen un arma accesible, es también un problema de salud mental, de cómo manejar las emociones, etc.
The follow-up question from Perla has to do, what would be the message then for the community, for all of us, taking into account that mental health is a key driver of this problem? Obviously, drug addiction and the easy accessibility of arms is a problem, but underlying all this, there is mental health issues and the expression of emotions. Therefore, what can we tell the community to do?
That there is help available for mental health issues, and we have a whole list of numbers that people can call to seek out mental health through DBH and through other nonprofit agencies, and to avail themselves of that help. I mean, I know myself going through the last 20 some months, and especially after today, that it stresses you out to the point where it affects you mentally. And you have to seek out that help and talk to people and talk to professionals. And we have a list of resources that are available for people to call to get the help that they need. We have a plethora of hospitals in hospital institutions in our city that people can avail themselves of help there. And just reach out and we will find someone to help you.
And if I could add, Armando, I'm sorry, go ahead, do the translation.
No, you go ahead.
And I will add, and I will say, particularly speaking to Black and Brown communities, there is no shame in asking for help. I know that that is a barrier for us culturally, and I would encourage for us to lean on our families and our supports to encourage us, encourage those that we know who might be in harm's way or vulnerable to harm, to walk with our friends, our family members, our neighbors to get the support that they need and allow for there to not to be shame in the vulnerability and asking for help.
I mean, if you look at some of the high profile athletes recently, both Olympic athletes and Philadelphia Eagles and others who have just admitted the fact that they're stressed out and they need to step back and they need to reassess. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed of. All of us need to do it, especially these days.
La respuesta, Perla, es que hay ayuda disponible para los temas de salud mental y nosotros alentamos a la comunidad a que hagan uso de estos servicios. Tenemos números disponibles, se puede llamar a DBH, por favor, para obtener ayuda. Yo mismo, dice el alcalde, en los últimos 20 meses y especialmente después de los sucesos lamentables de esta mañana, hemos sido víctimas del estrés, de la tensión mental, y hay profesionales dispuestos y recursos disponibles. Por lo tanto, mi mensaje es que la comunidad llame a todos los centros disponibles, tanto en los hospitales como en los centros ambulatorios, para obtener la ayuda. Erika nos agrega que especialmente para las comunidades de color, donde culturalmente ha sido hasta cierta forma un tabú el buscar ayuda, que no hay ninguna vergüenza ni estigma en hacerlo, y se alienta a los miembros de la familia, a los vecinos, a la comunidad en general, a obtener apoyo, identificando a las personas vulnerables, a las personas que puedan necesitar ayuda o que estén en el ámbito de la violencia, para encontrar el apoyo profesional y comunitario necesario. Nos recuerda finalmente el alcalde nuevamente de que incluso en el caso de atletas de perfil nacional, como los jugadores de los Eagles, ha habido momentos en los cuales esta gente está teniendo momentos de salud mental delicados por los factores estresantes de lo que hemos estado viviendo, y que no hay ninguna vergüenza. Más bien es una señal de fortaleza el buscar ayuda para salir de estos problemas. Gracias.
Thank you both. And seeing that this is at time and no further questions, that concludes today's briefing. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Thanks, Sherry.